I don't know Gary Smith.
Gary Smith.
Robert Jordan.
Mary Alice Monroe.
You know, it's hard to pick favorites because some of these people are my best friends.
Ellie Davis has done a tremendous amount for local poetry, not only with her own extremely good poetry, but by running the Monday night readings.
Margery Wentworth.
Margery Wentworth, our poet laureate.
So often when I give a poetry reading, people who aren't poets, who have never been to a poetry reading, come because they like me. Maybe I work with them, or they're a neighbor or something, and they always leave and say, oh wow, gosh, I mean, all those poems I connected in my life and really moved me, and I didn't know poetry was like that.
I'm going to start with a poem called Barrier Island. You all know we're on a barrier island, and you'll recognize the lighthouse.
We had thought about coming here as a family. My husband was going to produce a film with Chris, his friend Chris Fay, and it was wow, what a cool place. You know, we thought we'd rent a house on an island and bring the kids down, get out of the city for a couple weeks.
Yeah, I grew up in the suburbs of Wilmington, Delaware, so it was pretty bland and not a lot of spice to it, and I was looking for something with more zest to it, and Charleston provided that.
We moved here, moved to an island, and it was just overwhelming and beautiful, and everything was so lush and intense, and everything just growing and in this sort of abundance, and it was almost always sunny, and you know, I grew up in New England where it's hardly ever sunny.
You know, just here, you're just taking a walk there, your mind is, and your eyes are just always have something to play with here.
So I really was just, you know, the aesthetic of all that just overwhelmed me, and then I saw it destroyed by a hurricane very quickly.
You know, I'd never been through anything like that from where I'd come from, and ended up writing a couple stories about that. Spent most of the year with a man up in McClellanville who was just clobbered by the hurricane, and just kind of just studying the effects on him and his life psychologically of that event.
As I began to write out of that, I was sort of writing and healing and trying to keep my family and create some sort of normalcy for our family because we were displaced for a year. And as my poems began to incorporate this place and the elements of the natural world, and I saw that begin to repair itself. There was this whole emotional connection that I made to this landscape because it almost became a metaphor for my heart. I think that connection created, you know, some really intense poems, and then they began to get published. And then, you know, I wake up one morning and I'm the poet laureate.
When I moved here, I was always an environmentalist, always really influenced by setting. Anyone who reads my early novels sees setting plays a major role. But here, you're so close to so many various ecosystems. You have the marsh, the Piedmont mountains not far away, and of course the ocean.
You know, my poems about flowers on Sullivan's Island are about all my friends who were dying of AIDS in the 80s. My poems about much of the landscape and the beach, and even the Ace Basin, where I used to like to go, is the largest area of preserved wetlands in the United States. They were about, you know, the emotional roller coaster that we were all on.
My writing opportunity to write the story about, you know, this turtle that I was going to tell, the sea turtles. I was a turtle lady. And all of a sudden I had this ability to realize, my God, I can really make a difference. I can educate all the readers about this endangered species.
I think one of the most interesting things about being poet laureate is I get to go places and meet people and do things that I wouldn't do otherwise. There's really nothing I have to do. But I felt like there's lots of wonderful things that we could be doing. Poets in the schools, poets in the prisons, particularly the youth, you know.
I really like the fact that I've, you know, in a nonfiction realm, have gone and not experimented, but gone and investigated things that no one else has. It's always struck me that African American history in Charleston, it's sort of like a black hole, African American experience here. It's this incredible presence that you can feel, but you can't see it. Even before I started to work at Avery, I started to get very intrigued with the Denmark-Vesey insurrection, you know, the story of a possible aborted slave rebellion in Charleston in 1822. Did it or did it not happen? So that's actually sort of something I'm writing about now too.
I think I'm very, very proud that my work has inspired people to volunteer, to donate money, to make a difference.
Charleston just seduces you, hurricanes and all. It's exotic, it's rich in all ways. It's just a very seductive place.
You're constantly surrounded by this landscape, and the people have been very kind, very warm, very welcoming. I feel like I've come home. I'll never leave.
You know, Charleston is very much it's still very fluid. It's still becoming what it is, and we're part of that. It would not be the same place without the arts. And it's very vital and important, and I love being part of it.
I've never really thought that I would leave behind a legacy, a long-term legacy. That seems to be such a high goal. If you think about it, in 100 years, how many authors are remembered? If I make a difference in my own time, honestly, that's enough.
And you know, it's really hard. It's like the jury's still out, and I almost think we can't really judge things in our own time. We can certainly enjoy our stuff, but we're not going to know how it's going to last. Yeah, but Charleston is a very congenial place to write these days.
All I know is I have these stories I want to tell, and so far I've been able to get those stories published, and a lot of people have wanted to read them. Faulkner was always having a dead mule float by on a flood. You know, you get a lot of floods, and there was always a dead mule floating by. Coleman McCarthy killed 59 mules, separate and distinct in one blood meridian. But by this criteria, I'm not a Southern writer, because I look back on all of my books. I don't have a single dead mule in any of them. But I've solved that problem. The new book I'm working on, A Memory of Light, I've managed to squeeze in a few dead mules into the prologue. On my tombstone, I don't know. He told a good story.
Robert Jordan, if you love the Wheel of Time, wow, what can I say? It's classic.
I never expected my own life to be so influenced by a body of literature that I had read. It has shaped part of my career choices. It has brought friends into my life. It has brought family into my life. I just want to say thank you.
That's all, folks.